and helped Indra regain his kingdom when he had offended their spiritual master, Brahaspati. Brahaspati is the name of the spiritual master of the demigods, Brahaspati. You know that name, huh? Good. So Brahaspati had been offended by Indra, and so he left. He left the heavenly realm. They couldn't find him. Couldn't find him anywhere. And because he had offended Indra, Indra had offended Brahaspati, Indra had become weak. His protection provided by his spiritual master's presence was gone. So the demons came and attacked and took over the heavenly kingdom. Indra went to get some help. The help that was advised was Vishvarup, the son of Twashta. He can help you. He helped him. He got his kingdom back. There's details. He got his kingdom back. Yay! Indra's happy. First he was happy, then he was sad, now he's happy again. And it's all about his toys. Having toys, losing his toys, getting his toys back. His toys means his kingdom, his stuff, his opulence. He lost his opulence. Then he got it back, and he's really happy. But when he was really happy, he got carried away again. And Vishvarup, remember his name? Son of Twashta, Brahman. He was doing yagyas to produce nectar for the demigods, but he was also giving some of that nectar through mantra to demons, because his mother was from that family. So Indra, when he found out, and went on for quite some time, and when he found out, he flew in a rage, got his sword and chopped off Vishvarup's head. Indra made a big mistake. He killed the Brahmin. And a Brahmin who helped him get his kingdom back. Really bad. Really bad. He underwent austerities for a long, long time. But Twashta wasn't satisfied. Twashta performed the yagya that would create a demon, Vritrasura, that would kill Indra. But sometimes it happens that people that do these yagyas, they don't pronounce the mantras right. So he mispronounced one syllable only. And instead of creating an entity that would kill Indra, he created an entity that would be killed by Indra, because of one syllable pronounced wrong. Phew. So Twashta came out of the fire, gigantic, reaching into the sky, big red beard, big red hair, gnashing teeth, coppery red eyes, big trident in his hand. And he led the demons in an attack and kicked out the demigods. Oh, now Indra's unhappy again. He lost his kingdom again. He lost his kingdom because he had killed a Brahmin. Not just offended, but killed. So the demons took over the heavenly planets again. Indra sat again. So Indra went to Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu said, "Shame on you for your bad activities. But to help you get your kingdom back, here's what you can do." It was 3 steps. 1, go to Dadichi, a great soul. Ask him for his bones, which means he'd have to give up his life to give his bones. And he gave up his life and gave his bones. 2, take the bones to Vishvakarma, and he'll take those bones of Dadichi, strengthened by Dadichi's austerities, and he'll fashion a thunderbolt weapon powerful enough to kill Vritrasura. And then that's the 3rd part. Take the thunderbolt weapon and go kill Vritrasura. You got your kingdom back. How's that? So he did those things, 1, 2, 3. got into a big battle again between the demons, and Indra's now got this thunderbolt. The demon soldiers started to flee when they saw Indra coming with his big thunderbolt weapon. And Vritrasura then has this chivalrous conversation with Indra. We got through 2 parts, and we're going to hopefully finish this evening. The first part was, thank you very much for coming before me. See this big trident in my hand? With this trident, I'm going to sever your head from the rest of your body, because you're a terrible person. You're a terrible person. You killed my brother, who was your spiritual master, who helped you get your kingdom back. Fie on you. You're finished. Persons like you, and they went on and on and on in chivalrous talk. Then he said, but if you kill me first, that's really good. Because that thunderbolt weapon that you have, it's empowered by Lord Vishnu. You got me. And when you kill me, it'll be great, because this curse to become a demon that Parvati placed upon me, it'll be taken away. And I'll be free of that curse. And then I can go back to Godhead. And that was the second part. Then the third part was he starts speaking to Indra, saying, our Lord, because they both worship Lord Vishnu. They both worship Lord Vishnu. And he particularly worships Lord Sankarshan, a form of Lord Vishnu, from his previous life. But he remembers his previous life. Our Lord is the same. And our Lord doesn't like for us to hanker for material things. He'll give, but he doesn't like, because it's not in our best interest. He wants what our best interest is. So he never really encourages us like that. But you, Indra, you want your kingdom, and what I want is the association of Narada Muni and persons like him, because they're always going to remind me, and I'll be always there, be very Krishna conscious, because they'll remind me of Krishna. So why don't you go ahead and just cut off my head with your nice thunderbolt weapon, and everything will be nice. And then he starts praying, or instead of addressing Indra, now he's talking to the Lord. That's where we were yesterday evening. All of that was just to have you catch up to where we got so far. So this is Vritrasura speaking to Lord Sankarshan. Although he's not physically there, he's praying to him this way. O my Lord, source of all opportunities, I do not desire to enjoy in Dhruvaloka. You know what Dhruvaloka is, right? Good for you. The heavenly planets, or the planet where Lord Brahma resides, nor do I want to be the supreme ruler of all the earthly planets, or the lower planetary systems. I do not desire to be the master of the powers of mystic yoga, nor do I want liberation. If I have to give up your lotus feet, all the other things that people are chasing after, without the service of you, no thank you. Oh lotus eye, then he gives a metaphor. There's three. Baby birds. Ever seen baby birds in a nest? No? I was visiting in one time in Los Angeles, in the place where they have the sannyas quarters. You walk up a flight of steps, and you turn left, and you go into the sannyas quarters. But before you turn left, there's kind of like a balcony thing, because there's another apartment over to the right. And in that space in between one apartment and the other apartment, there was like some kind of a water meter or some kind of fixture, something like that. And on top, there was a bird nest. And inside the bird nest were two little baby birds. They didn't have feathers yet. And they were just waiting for Mama Bird to come bring them food. And so I just stood there and watched. I guess I kept a distance because I didn't want to scare them. And I watched the whole scene. And in comes Mama Bird, and she's like really protective. You better stay away from my baby bird. And she's got something to eat, some insect or a worm or something. The little bird holds his neck up, and it opens his beak and makes a lot of noise. And then the mother bird drops in yummy stuff for the little baby bird. And he's like really happy. And then she flies off to go get some more goodies. But the little baby bird has no wings. So it's completely dependent upon mother bird. O lotus-eyed Lord, as baby birds that have not yet developed their wings always look for their mother to return and feed them, or as small calves tied with ropes await anxiously the time of milking, when they will be allowed to drink the milk of their mothers, or as a morose wife whose husband is away from home always longs for him to return and to satisfy her in all respects, I also yearn for the opportunity to render direct service unto you. Now he's remembering from his previous life, he was King Chitraketu. And in King Chitraketu, he had direct service to Lord Sankarshan. He had his darshan. He didn't like just stay there all the time, but he was feeling connected through his service to Lord Sankarshan. Seeing him, then remembering him, and then doing all of his activities. He actually not just became a resident of this Vidyadhara Loka, he became king of the Vidyadhara Loka. And that's a really high place. It's not quite yet at the heavenly level, but just below. There's upper planetary systems and there's lower planetary systems. And the three from where we are, Bhu Loka, or Bhu Mandala, that's this realm. Above Bhu Mandala or Bhu Loka is Bhuvar Loka. In Bhuvar Loka is a place where the Gandharvas and the Apsaras and the Siddhas and the Kinnaras, the Vidyadharas, they all have their place in that middle region. And then heaven is above that. This is the vertical dimension of planetary systems described in the Bhagavatam. So he was way up there, enjoying opulence, everything, but not interested in the opulence. He was interested in serving. So when he got cursed to become a demon, he didn't have the opulence anymore, but he had the desire to serve, because that doesn't change when the body changes. That's good news, because we forget things because of change of body. Where's our boys over here? From Bhagavad Gita. You like Bhagavad Gita, right? Okay. So from Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, in chapter 4 Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that long ago, I taught this knowledge to the sun god Vivaswan. Vivaswan, the sun god, taught it to his son, Manu, Vivasvata Manu. Manu taught this knowledge to his son Ikshvaku, and this way disciplic succession is passed on. And Arjuna says, wait a minute. How can you say that you instructed the sun god Vivasvan? Because you're my age. And the sun god is so old. So how could you instruct the sun god? And then what did Krishna say? He said, many, many births you and I have passed. I can remember all of them and you cannot. Right? He said that? Now, question. Why? Why is it that Krishna could remember and Arjuna couldn't remember? Why? Yeah? And what's different between God and a living entity? There's many things, but what are some of the things that's different between God and a living entity? He what?
God
Doesn't die. Very good. Now, what is it that dies? It's the body that dies. The soul doesn't die. The soul is as eternal as God is eternal. They're co-eternal. But Arjuna has a body. He takes birth and dies. And Krishna doesn't have a material body. So when we have a material body, we have a tendency to forget. Just like, how old are you now? 9. So once upon a time, you were not 9. You're probably like, let's take a number, when you were 3 or 4. How much do you remember when you were 3 or 4 years old? Not much, right? Not much. The reason is change of body. That's the reason. The body doesn't die just at the end, at the final, but the body is changing or dying moment to moment. And we don't remember the previous, to some extent we can remember the previous moment, but far back in time we can't remember. And the reason we can't remember is changing of bodies. But Krishna doesn't change bodies. Like you said, he doesn't die. He's eternal. The soul is eternal, and Krishna is eternal. But he remembers and we cannot because he doesn't have a body. Now some people, and Vritrasura is one, he could remember his previous life. But most people can't. He could remember his previous life because he was beyond the conception of the body. No problem. You know the story of Jad Bharat? Jad Bharat? Do you know the story of Jad Bharat? Jad Bharat was also, in his previous life, he was a king. Bharat Maharaj, the king. Bharat Maharaj, when he ruled in his kingdom for a long time, turned his kingdom over to his sons. He went off to the forest to develop and advance in bhakti life. He did austerities, he did meditation on Gayatri Mantra, and he did, lots of nice things. He wanted to become perfect in devotional yoga, bhakti yoga. Something happened. What happened? What happened was he saw a female deer that was pregnant and heard the roar of a lion, and she got startled and jumped. And when she jumped, the baby deer that she was pregnant with took birth, and she fell into a river, and the river carried her away and she drowned. So this left this little baby deer, a fawn, with no protection. So the king, Bharat Maharaj, went and rescued the deer and started becoming like the mother and father and, everything for the deer. And he got so absorbed in the deer, he started diminishing and slackening and stopped practicing his devotional life. His whole life became the deer. One day the deer didn't come back at night. So he went out at night looking for the deer, and he fell off a cliff and died, thinking of the deer. So when he died, the soul was carried to the next mother based upon what the mind is fixed on at the time of death. He became a deer. The king became a deer. But he was given remembrance of his previous life as a king and his interest in spiritual practice. So he went to a place where there were sages, and he just hung out with the sages. Little deer, listening to them and taking remnants of their food and things like that. And he lived his life as a deer. And in his very next lifetime, he took birth in a Brahmin family and became Jud Bharat. But he had full recollection of those two previous lifetimes, as a king, then as a deer, then as a son of a Brahmin. Now that doesn't happen too often, but he was given that remembrance. And Vritrasura is remembering Lord Sankarshan. He's remembering Narada Muni. Narada Muni was also very kind to him in his previous life. Narada Muni, his previous life as King Chitraketu, who gave him his mantra and gave him nice teachings in spiritual practice. So he had that gift of memory of his previous life. So that's what he wants. He's praying to the personality of Godhead. I just want to be engaged in your service again. If I can become freed from this demon body, asura body, that will be nice. Because the curse will be gone, and then I can be with you. And I can be with Narada and people like Narada that just were going to remind me of you. That's what I want. The final verse of the chapter. O my Lord, my Master, I'm wandering throughout this material world as a result of my fruitive activities. Therefore, I simply seek friendship in the association of your pious and enlightened devotees. My attachment to my body, wife, children, home is continuing by the spell of your eternal external energy. Now, he doesn't have a wife. He came out of a fire. But anyway, he's speaking like that. He has no children either. He just came out of a fire. But in any case, I don't want these worldly attachments. But I wish to be attached to them no longer. Let my mind, my consciousness, and everything I have be attached only unto you. So when Indra hears this person with a trident that was just shaking his trident at him and saying, I'm going to sever your head from the rest of your body. You're a bad person. You're a killer of a Brahmin. Fie on you. Now he's, speaking all these very high devotional messages. Indra is stunned. You're not a demon. You're this very elevated personality. So he doesn't know what to do. So Vritrasura takes a different tact. He decides, I know what to do. I'll throw my trident at him, and then he'll get out of being bewildered, because he'll know immediately. He'll want to, like reflex, he'll want to fight against me, and that's what I want. I want him to use that thunderbolt weapon and finish me, and then I'm finished with this curse. So that's what he did. He just decided, took his trident and threw his trident at Indra. Indra took the thunderbolt and broke the trident. And then the battle went on. And eventually he killed Vritrasura. It took, it was a bit of a deal to kill him, but he killed Vritrasura. And when he killed Vritrasura, same. Indra got his kingdom back, and Vritrasura went back to Godhead. Because his mind was fixed on the Supreme Lord. And whatever your mind is fixed on at the moment of death, that's where you go. But Indra had a problem. Although he's got the kingdom back, he just killed another elevated Vaishnav. First it was he offended by neglect. It kind of escalated. He offended Brahaspati just by ignoring him. Then he killed the Brahmin. Now he's killed the topmost devotee. Whew, poor Indra. He's got a problem. Sin personified started pursuing him. And wherever he went high, he went low, he went in the air, he went in the water, any place he went. Sin personified was following him, ready to grab him and finish him. So finally, it's very interesting, he entered into the stem of a lotus and underwent austerities there for a long time. Atoning for the sin of killing Vritrasura, who looked like a terrible demon, but he knew he wasn't just a terrible demon. He was an super elevated Vaishnava. Eventually, there's this description in Ramayana. Some of you may know that section in Ramayana. The place where Tattaka resided. You know who is Tattaka? The first demon that Ram killed? Big monster lady. Do you know that story? Tattaka? So she was inhabiting a place that before she got there, it was Agastya Muni was residing there, and Agastya Muni was residing there because when Indra had an abhishek was performed for him at the end of his austerities for having killed Vritrasura, the water from his abhishek went to that particular place. And he gave Indra then, being grateful that the earth there had accepted the cleansed water from his abhishek, he blessed that their two wonderful kingdoms would develop in that forested area, and they did. And Agastya liked the forest, so he had an ashram there. And when Tattaka wanted to get back at Agastya, that's another long story, for having killed her husband when her husband tried to attack and kill Agastya. So she went there to try to take it over and made it a very terrible place. But before that, it was made very auspicious because the Abhishek of Indra made it, and then his benediction to make it a wonderful place. Anyway, he had to atone for that sin. And eventually became freed. So the lesson, the reason for, actually the background for narrating all of this is a few days ago, for the benefit of the devotees in China, it was the concluding segment of something like an 18-part series of covering the first 6 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. So as I was narrating, I didn't go into all this detail because it would have taken twice as long because they had to say it in Chinese after I said it in English. Shoo. So I thought this is a nice section to dive into. So here we are. But there's some important lessons. The 6th canto, Prabhupada gave it the title, Prescribed Duties for Mankind. Prescribed duties for mankind. is what Indra had to do in order to become Indra. But prescribed duties for mankind don't necessarily, they lead to piety, but they don't necessarily lead to a heart that's absolutely pure, because the piety, you can become, indulge in enjoying the piety, the fruits of piety. That's what happens to Indra and other personalities that have fruits of piety, but their heart's not pure. So one needs to go, Bhagavatam is teaching us one needs to go beyond. We need to do our prescribed duties, and we need to go beyond our prescribed duties to the point of bhakti. And Vritrasura had it from his previous life by the grace of Narada. He was attached, but he became free from those attachments by the process of bhakti. And even when misunderstood and being cursed to become a demon, he didn't lose his bhakti. It's not destroyed with time. Bhakti may get covered for us small timers, beginners on the path of bhakti, but it's never lost. Never lost. Permanent. That's Krishna says that in Bhagavad Gita. So the Bhagavatam is teaching us the prescribed duty for mankind is ultimately take shelter of the personality of Godhead. For everyone that's in this progressive value of life, that's what we should do. And even it may result in some misunderstandings and some bad stuff happens, that's okay, because our bhakti will be protected. Just as one who abides by Dharma is protected by Dharma. Dharmo rakshati rakshataha. One who protects Dharma is protected by Dharma. One who serves Krishna is protected by Krishna. And that's stronger. Even if there's some mistake. And even if there's some misunderstanding and so many things like that, one is protected, ultimately protected. So let's see if there's some discussion. 6th canto is a nice canto. All the cantos are nice, but it's a nice canto.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. I have 2 questions. The first one is, when Chitraketu's son was poisoned, Narada Muni came up to him and started imparting transcendental knowledge immediately,
Yes.
right? So usually it's, at least in today's world, it's devotees, when someone loses their, like a member of their family,
Yeah.
they usually comfort them before.
Yes, that's correct. You got it right. But Narada knows his audience, right? When he meets a hunter, he didn't give him transcendental knowledge, right? He knows his audience. He knows how to, each person, what their capacity is to hear, and he delivers accordingly. Don't kill them completely. Really? Why do you say that? Because they suffer. No, I never thought they suffer. Not only they suffer, but so he according to time, place, circumstance, Narada speaks. So what you're saying is correct. Normally we don't do like that. But Chitraketu was obviously not an ordinary fellow. I mean, in 7 days, he saw the personality of Godhead by chanting his mantra. He's not an ordinary fellow. Next.
Usually it's said in the scriptures that brahmanas usually forgive people after they have committed their offenses.
Yeah.
Tvasta was a brahmana, but he did not follow this principle.
Yeah. He certainly didn't. Now, there could be different reasons. It doesn't say what the reason is. There could be different reasons. Possibilities are he was being an instrument of the Lord to have this has as a son Vritrashara go back to Godhead. When unnatural behaviors occur, sometimes that's a reason. You probably one example. There's two examples. One example that comes to mind is when Ram is speaking to Lakshman about Kaikeyi. He says, "This isn't Kaikeyi. Kaikeyi, this and that and the other thing. She always said she has even more affection for me than she does for Bharata. She treated me like a mother treats her son. She was always very kind and gentle, and this isn't Kaikeyi." So it must be there's some other will at play, and she's being an instrument of that other will. That's how I take it. It's a providential arrangement, and therefore I have no feeling towards Kaikeyi for what she just did. And Maharaj Parikshit, doing what Maharaj Parikshit did, putting a dead snake around a sage's neck and being overwhelmed with thirst, that's not Maharaj Parikshit. So there's a purpose behind elevated persons, and Twashta was an elevated person, direct son of Brahma and a very elevated Brahmana. So why did he lose it? A purpose. That's one explanation. Another explanation is sometimes there's purposes, there are reasons to give strong lessons when strong lessons are required. Now, if his mentality was get back, it's one thing. If his mentality was give a strong lesson, it's another thing. I'm thinking of some other examples. One other example that I'm thinking of is when Agastya Vishwamitra Muni requested the charity of his cow, Sabala. He said no. Brahmins give charity, but I can't be separated from Sabala. We're inseparable. And Sabala will feel the same. So then Vishwamitra forcibly tried to take Sabala away. And he didn't do anything. He was being, a very passive Brahmin. And Sabala said, "You got to do something. You can let him take me away?" He said, "Well, Brahmanas have to be very tolerant." She said, "Well, you don't have to do anything. Just say, stop." That's all it took. And the rest happened. So, depending upon circumstance, one may, a very tolerant person may say something and even do something. May say stop and not just be a punching bag. Or, let persons who have a tendency to abuse just be abusive and do nothing. They may do something, depending on the circumstance. So that's another possible explanation. Now, it doesn't say anywhere in the Bhagavatam why. Okay? Something else? That's it.
Raj, this time when you narrated about Jada Bharat, one thing that came to my was striking for me was Bharat Maharaj became a deer next life, and then, but from there he just took forward step. Like he went on to just stay around the sages, and it's like when I see from outside, it's like a very drastic fall, like from a human body to a deer body, and
Yeah, it is.
it feels like a big distress in one sense. So I was just thinking, when I face the reactions of the past, sometimes this acceptance comes. Krishna is teaching something, and it's something towards my growth. But there are sometimes it causes me irritability or agitation kind of a state. And I was just reflecting on this, that then the forward step becomes obscured when the mood is not right. Is it like attachment to having a peaceful life that's, not
Just attachment to peaceful life, attachment to, fill in the blank. Having a life that looks like this, or looks like that, or looks like the other thing. Different persons' attachments are going to be different. So one is, I'm just interrupted, but one may want a peaceful life, but it may not be a peaceful life. But it can be a peaceful life as a deer. Well, yes, in the association, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur prays in one of his Sharanagati songs. Similar to what we heard here. I don't want this, that, and the other, benefit. If it means no devotional service to you. The Bhaktivinoda Thakur prays like that. I don't want the post of Brahma. Better become a dog in the home of devotees, because then I'll have devotee association and I can serve the devotees. That's extreme, of course, but the principle is being in the association of devotees and being able to be of some service. One can imagine. I remember there was a deer that was coming around at one of the festivals in New Vrindavan. And everyone was like, wow. Then he would just look at everybody and didn't run away. And they would give him some prasadam, and he'd take the prasadam. They'd look at everybody and they give it. He was having a good time. I mean, so to speak, because being in the body, anybody is not fun, but he was with the devotees and hearing the kirtan and taking prasadam, and from the position of being in a deer body. So that part didn't leave him. So the comparison is, when some misfortune comes and it's drastic, there's a tendency to have some bad emotions about the drastic thing that happened, and it takes away acceptance because of those negative emotions. That it's due to attachment, not just I want a peaceful life. It's just things shouldn't be like this. Things should be like that. And with things like this instead of like that, then it doesn't match our expectations of what happiness is supposed to be. A good life. Now it's really easy to talk about these things, and it's another thing to do these things. Part of what we're going to be speaking about over the weekend is exactly stuff like this. the St. Francis of Assisi story, which I mentioned the other day. It's going to be one of the breakout session discussions.
One more question.
Yeah, and another fantastic example of tolerating misfortune is Jayadev Goswami. You know that story. And he was not just treated badly and had some misfortune. They robbed him and tied him up and threw him down at the bottom of a well. And he was just compassionate to the people who did that. Phew. That's extreme. Okay, so next.
Next is like, it's a how-to question.
Okay, go ahead.
How to become a better recipient of mercy.
Well, practice. You cultivate. It's open the heart and keep the heart open. And with the heart open, here comes whatever comes. And whatever comes, if one is oriented towards Krishna's mercy, it's going to be perceived as Krishna's mercy, whatever it is. And the heart closes, with the bodily identification and what happiness means in terms of bodily identification, and the heart closes. One loses one's self-interest, one loses connection with Krishna, and the negative emotions rule, fear and all the other negative emotions. So it's keeping the heart open, and that's our sadhu sangha is one of the best ways. Because in sadhus, what do sadhus do? They engage in sound vibration and a mode of loving service. Spiritual sound vibration and loving service. How are you doing? Anyone else on this side of the room? Yes? This young fellow.
Why
You
did
take your mask down and speak directly into the mic.
why did Indra kill
Vritrasura.
his brother, even though he was just helping
Here's
the-
why.
the demigods
Yes.
get stronger by the nectar?
Yeah. He is envious. This is for me, it is not for them. And so as far as he is concerned, Indra, this nectar, which means it brings long-lasting life and great joy, that's meant for demigods. That's the us. It's not meant for the other group. Because if they get long-lasting life and joy, then, they're dangerous people. They're always enemies of us and trying to take over our kingdom and stuff. So they shouldn't get it. He was envious. And people that are proud and envious, they can do bad stuff. He regretted it shortly after. He underwent long austerities, but that's what prompted him. Pride and envy.
Couldn't he just say, just don't make the nectar?
Why didn't you just say, stop doing this and just kill?
Because he's a macho guy. When people are proud, they can do very hurtful things and have no problem in doing very hurtful things. I mean, I know some people like that. They're really, whatever, intelligent and powerful and this and that. And they can do just any darn thing and feel nothing about it. And they keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. It comes from pride. Narada Muni says this. It's a very nice, you can read, you get a nice answer to your question. When Narada Muni goes to visit Kuvera, and he, instead of finding Kuvera, he finds the two sons of Kuvera, Nalakuvara and Manigriva, enjoying at night in a sacred river with some ladies. And they're intoxicated. And they come standing before him naked. And that's an insult. But he doesn't feel insulted. He's feeling sorry for them. Why are they like this? I know why they're like this. Their father is the treasure of heaven, and so they're very wealthy. Their father is a dear devotee of Lord Shiva, and so they're proud of being dear to Lord Shiva. They're double proud. That's how they can do stuff like this. Because of pride. Then he goes into this whole thing of when one is proud, one can do any hurtful thing, no problem. And feel justified. So, read that section. Narada contemplating why Nalakuvara and Manigriva are doing like this. And what's the best thing to do to help them? And you'll get the answer to your question. Over here. Something?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I think you answered one way of what my question is going to be.
Okay, good.
When we talk about Bharat Maharaj, and when I look at that, means he was such a devotee of his caliber in that yuga. If at last stage of his life he was still attached to dear for myself in this yuga with so many distractions, what can
What's
I
the
do?
hope for me?
Yes, what's the hope for me?
He became elevated by mercy. And you can become elevated by mercy, but don't turn your back on the merciful. He did. But it's elaborately discussed in Bhakti Sandarbha, how it happened. Without going into the elaborate, it was a conscious choice. It wasn't karma, it was a conscious choice. And so what the hope for you is mercy, that's on the descending part. And then for you, just, don't fall into a lapse of complacency and make, ignorant choices. Now, the possibility is you could make an ignorant choice. But protection against ignorance and ignorant choices is there. That's what the Lord does for his devotee. Now, in the case of Bharat, there was course correction. It took a lifetime, but there was course correction. And so the hope for us is, stay eager for mercy while you're making your bhakti efforts. And that's the hope for you. Same for me. Same for me. Same for all of us. You have something else?
When Shiva was having the Bhagavatam class, and when Parvati cursed the
King Chitraketu.
yeah, how did the when he turned into a demon, how did he remember Krishna? Because Krishna usually kills the demons.
The answer is same way anybody remembers Krishna. There's from Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is in the heart of everyone, and Krishna gives forgetfulness or Krishna gives remembrance. The how one can remember is Krishna can give remembrance or forgetfulness. Some people can remember. That's like you two are brothers, right? Yeah. So I asked your older brother, do you remember when you were 3 or 4 years old, stuff that you did? And no. But some people can remember. Prabhupada told a story. I heard it several times. He remembers when he was a little baby in the lap of his sister, who was feeding him with some milk, and she was knitting. He has a bottle of milk, and she was knitting. And he remembers it. Now, I don't remember stuff like that. But, somehow Prabhupada, that was a memory that Krishna gave him. So that's how. Forgetfulness also comes from Krishna. Anything else? Yeah.
So when Chitraketu died.
When Chitraketu died.
No, when he got the curse.
Yeah.
Did he die right away, or
No. We don't have the answer to that question, but at least he got in his vimana and went somewhere.
Okay.
He went back to Vidyadhara Loka. How many minutes, days, or years it was before he became a demon, we don't know. We don't know.
Oh.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. One question. So Indra is a title, right?
Indra's a title. That's exactly
So,
correct.
In all references to Indra, we see his personality is very similar in all references.
Well, it's similar but not the same. We gave one example. One example is Bali Maharaj. After the present Indra is finished and there's another Manu, he's going to become Indra.
That is what I was kind of asking. That so if he becomes Indra, will he also behave like the other Indras?
Oh no. He's Bali Maharaj. He's the topmost devotee. So there's tendencies, but it's there's variety within those tendencies. Even Brahmas, there's varieties within the Brahmas and varieties of destinations of Brahma after Brahma's life. It's not all the same pattern. There's options depending, but there's tendencies for sure. The tendency is really simple. Opulence, the fruits, piety brings fruits of piety. And fruits of piety decorating a person whose heart is not pure, then pride is there. Same principle as mentioning to him. When pride is there, bad stuff. Not always bad stuff, but some bad stuff. Maybe Indra got in a fight with Krishna over a tree. After Krishna had brought back Aditi's earrings. Just think about that. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. follow-up question with this. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that among all Pandavas, I am Arjuna. Among all demigods, I am Indra. So when he says that way,
He's great. Indra's great.
but why Indra displays these kinds of qualities?
Well, he's the king of the demigods. He does bad stuff, but he's the king of the demigods. No, Arjuna doesn't do that bad stuff, but Indra does. Arjuna's not a demigod. Arjuna's a pure devotee. Arjuna's an eternal associate of Krishna. Indra's a post. But amongst the demigods, it's the top post amongst the demigods.
Okay. So he is talking about that post is
Yeah.
Krishna.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, I think we're done. You have something.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. My question is about Indra's tricky situation.
Indra's what?
The tricky situation that he has to kill Dhritarashtra.
Yeah. Oh,
I mean, after hearing what he said,
yeah.
so I don't know what Indra felt, but then again he has to do his so-called duty to kill him to get his kingdom back. I mean, he can go to any extreme in those situations to do what is necessary. Or
Well, is your question, did Indra do the right thing? Is
Yes,
that what your question is? I mean, he didn't. Maybe he did the right thing, but not in the right consciousness. Because the right consciousness would be, let me do this great Vaishnava a favor. He's asking me, I'll take the consequence, not because I want my kingdom, but to release him from his curse. It's a stretch, but it's something like Virad and had to be buried alive and all that, because then he'd be freed with his curse. So please do it. So they did it. How are we doing? Something else?
You kindly mentioned that bhakti is never lost. I desire to know what is the qualification for remembrance of the fact that I am a servant of Krishna. And kind of like a related question. Next. Could you kindly discuss about the qualifications that Bharat Maharaj or King Chitraketu had such that they were given remembrance? This is from Amara Mataji.
Okay. Well, just like you, Amara, how do you're Krishna's eternal servant. How is it that you're even remembering to ask that question? How has that happened? And when you have the answer to that, you have the answer to your question. And the answer is sadhu sangha. Because otherwise you wouldn't even remember to ask that question, although it's a fact. We just forgot it. And the special factor of this is it's already answered. Remembrance comes from Krishna. We're going to do a couple more online, then we'll come over to you, okay? Go ahead.
From Govinda Mohini Mataji. Prabhupada told us that not to follow blindly. Try to understand the bhakti process, which is very scientific. I was talking to one of my scientist friends. She said that faith by definition is blind because you have to believe in something that you haven't seen. So no matter what path you follow, you're following blindly. How to respond to that?
It depends on the person, but you could say, my dear sir, you're a blind follower. Because you're believing in your senses, which are imperfect. So you're a blind follower. And then the difference between somebody that is a blind follower based upon their senses, that's imperfect, but you follow it anyways because you know your senses are imperfect. There is, we live with, you can't walk across the floor, you can't breathe, you can't drink water without faith. Faith is intrinsic to life. So it's a question of where you're going to invest your faith. You, my scientist friend, are investing faith in your senses, knowing that they're imperfect. Now, there's another faith that says, if there is such a thing as a person that's perfect, that's where I should repose my faith. So search for that. But, don't discount faith because we live with faith. You can't breathe the air that you breathe without faith, etc. Okay, you got the last question. Speak right into the microphone, please.
Why did he make the nectar?
Why what?
He made the why?
Why was the nectar produced? What was the reason for the nectar?
What was the reason for the nectar? There's a process which I don't know, that some brahmanas have the skill through mantra, through oblations into the fire, to produce this nectar. And then the nectar is distributed. Now, when the part of the process, which I don't understand, but I know in principle, when the oblations are offered into the fire, the demigods are receiving the oblations into the fire in the form of whatever it is that's intended for them to receive, in this case, nectar. And Vishwarup knew that process. He was like a really good Brahmin. So he knew the process, and with mantra, nectar was going, it's the mystical process or metaphysical process. Nectar was going to the demigods, and nectar was also going to those demons through mantra that he was reciting. Okay? I think that's it. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.